Welcome to our third product battle that is being hosted by Creatio. I am your host, Alex Petrenko, product evangelist with Creatio, and today my guest is Chris Isbell from Martin Associates, our partner and our dear friend. Hi, Chris. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Alex. Happy to be here. How are you?
Yeah, I'm perfect. Thank you for having the time for this product battle.
Yeah, looking
And
forward to it.
yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting session, and I'm pretty excited about doing this with you today, especially taking into account our topic today, right? So we're going to be comparing the configuration capabilities of Creatio and Microsoft Dynamics. Is that right, Chris?
That is correct, as I understand it.
All right, perfect. Well, I know that a lot of our customers and prospects, they always take into account the configurability of their future CRM, of their future application, right? And for us, the fact that Creatio is capable of applying those changes to the ever-changing business reality has always been a huge advantage, right? And we've been proving this point to our customers over the years. And every single time we do it, all of the prospects that see our product in action when it gets to changes are really impressed by how flexible it is, by how simple it is to do. And what we wanted to do today is really to take, Creatio and one of our, major competitors in the CRM space, Microsoft Dynamics, and compare the configuration of the application side by side against a specific use case, right, Chris?
That's
Perfect.
right. Yeah.
And the use case that we're going to be taking today is rather common, I would say, right? As we know, the business models of the organization change quite frequently. All of the companies try to look to get new revenue streams, to implement new business models, right? And even when it gets to something simple as introducing a partners channel, right, and a channel of sales through distributors, for some of those is pretty new, and a lot of those companies face challenges in actually implementing those new business models. So
Right.
today, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be actually comparing side by side how would an organization using either Creatio or Microsoft Dynamics implement a new business model, taking and configuring as less as possible, as quickly as possible, and reusing some of the out-of-the-box components of the application as much as possible, right? And I would like to remind our audience and our attendees that on your broadcast screen, in the bottom of the screen, you have the option to vote for either Microsoft Dynamics or Creatio, depending on which one you like most. At any time, you can change your opinion. You can vote, towards our competitor or towards us, and definitely leave your questions, feedback, share your thoughts in the chat area, just so that we know what you think, we know how you feel about what you're seeing during this product battle. And just to kick this off, Chris, if you don't mind, I'm going to go first with the demonstration, right? And I'm going to be just kicking it off in the way that we would normally do for any configuration of the system. So at this point, I'm going to just ask our broadcast managers to switch from, the video of the presenters today and switch to my screen so that we can actually start working on the configuration of the product. So what you should be seeing on your screen right now, guys, is really the opportunity page, right? This is the base view, the out-of-the-box view of the application as it is provided and as it is being available, through the deployment. And of course, if we wanted to somehow implement a new business model to introduce a new channel of sales for the partners or distributors, right, we would need to make some crucial changes to the structure of the page, to introduce a new typification of the opportunity, to make some changes to the workflow that we're going to be running, and of course, to introduce new business processes that are going to be supporting this, this type of sale. So in this case, what we would need to do in order to actually start building the application, right, or building the first step, is definitely working with the user interface configuration, working with the definition of the data model. And what you guys can see on the screen right now is our section wizard, one of our primary tools for the system configuration. right? Where our users can actually have a very simple drag and drop WYSIWYG kind of style of configuration of the application, right? Of course, in this case, what we can do is on the left-hand side, take any kind of, existing columns that are available in the data set and just simply drag and drop it to the user interface to drop it right there where you want it to be, right? And in addition to just reusing some of the existing columns, we can as well just take a completely new column and add it to the data set as well, right? To introduce a new column that has not been yet defined in the application. For example, the partner margin, right? In this case, as you can see, it's very simple to configure this. We just need to give it a caption, a title, and give it a name for the database and save it. And the application would be just adding it straight away to the UI, would be adding it straight away to the structure of the application. And of course, I can continue building the UI here in the same kind of style of configuration. If I need a couple of new grid layouts or groups of fields, I can easily do those. I can add some additional, details or many-to-one connections and really work flexibly with the whole changes to the user interface that is available here, right? And the way that we're trying to approach the changes to the application, to the UI, is really by empowering the citizen developers, the business analysts, the system administrators of the application to be able to take as much of a control ownership of these changes as they can, right? Just so that they are not limited, they're not tied to working with the classic development approach, right, and leveraging a lot of classic developments, that is usually provided by many companies. And of course, even though the application here is fully hosted in the clouds, it is very quickly changed. Those changes are being applied in maybe less than a minute, depending on the amount of configuration, and they are available straight away to all the users, right? So rolling out new data models, rolling out new, additional data points that need to be used by the end users, or making changes to the existing ones, really take very little time. And a lot of our customers and partners actually take a lot of, leverage this functionality and configuration capability of the platform. So while we're saving the changes here, which you can actually see being applied momentarily, so I think it was around 30 seconds, Chris, I'm going to ask our broadcast managers to maybe change the presentation and the view towards your screen. And I'm going to ask you to kind of run the same kind of steps, right? Open up the configuration of your application. Show us how would you add an existing column, maybe a new column to the data set, and how is the whole process looking on your side?
Absolutely, yeah, that was good. Thank you. Okay, so we are just checking out a quick dashboard. We're going to jump over to opportunities, and you can see I'm looking at my open opportunities, e.g. just a few that we have going. Just to give you a sample, let's open up our printers here. All right, so here's kind of the pretty Sales Hub view of Dynamics CRM. You can see it's a pretty clean interface here, and we can see various different things similar to your guys' tabs. But we're going to walk through, like you said, the same process of adding a new field, and we're going to add it over here into the main summary area that you see on the left.
Yep.
So to do that, we're going to jump into the customization area on the kind of the back end side of the system, and jump over to customize the system. I already have that window open for the sake of time, really. All right. Now you can see inside of this customization area, there's a lot of things that are possible to be customized throughout the system. So, option sets are basically, let's see, drop-down options that you might have for fields.
Yeah, like lookup values.
Like lookup values, yeah. Similar to Creatio's lookup values, yes.
Yep.
These option sets would be global and could be used across all kinds of different entities. So an entity in Dynamics is basically roughly equivalent to like a database table or a section in Creatio. We're going to roll down to opportunities. All right. In our opportunity, you can see there's lots of different things that we can customize. We're going to be customizing the form. One thing I want to note in Dynamic CRM, you can have multiple different forms, and you can assign these forms to different security roles and show, different fields on those different forms, kind of based on who might need access or, to see certain fields or not see certain fields. Thought being, if you have, let's say somebody who extensively works with channel sales, they might not care about all the fields that someone from inside sales might look like.
Yep.
So theoretically, you could have multiple forms to cover that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what I like about this, Chris, while you're opening up the configuration of the opportunity, what kind of drew my attention to is, even though the front end, the end user interface is kind of shiny and it's kind of this clean, kind of modern view over the CRM and the application that's very user friendly. When you get to the configuration side of Dynamics, it kind of gets, the old G Windows XP kind of system admin, where you're going to your device management or you're going into the printer setup, and you have all of these kind of options, and you really have to know what you're doing in order to get to the place where you need to be, right?
It does take a bit of training when you're looking at through that sales view, kind of the new happy, a Dynamics interface, and then getting into the back end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to discuss some of the trainings, and I would definitely want to discuss the adoption and the developer adoption of the configuration, of this kind of sides when we get towards the end of this session. But please carry on with the changes to the UI.
Yeah, no worries. So you can see we have the general form layout, right? Our header, we have our summary tab, and our different products tabs. You can see, even though on this form it's laid out kind of vertically, when you're looking at the interface, these big products tab, summary tab are kind of a tabbed review of that. That's just kind of some visual magic that happens. So let's go add a new field real quick. Right from this form, as I'm doing it, I can just hit new field over on the right under my listing of all the fields.
Yep.
So it'll pop up here. All right, much like you, we'll add a new field. We'll call it partner margin. I can set the requirement for that field, whether it has to be filled in or not. In this case, I'm just going to leave it optional. Business recommended just kind of adds like a little visual cue that, hey, we'd like this field to be filled in, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
Another thing, custom fields in the system can have field security enabled on them. Generally speaking, that's only for custom fields. We'll give it a brief description. So let's use channel partner margin. And here we get our field type. You can see there's a pretty good listing here. So a line of text, a multi-select option set, numbers, decimals. So we're just going to say, in this case, we'll make it a currency here. And we'll just keep it simple, and you can see it, we have a big mins and maxes. I'll just leave that alone. So we'll quickly save and close. So we have a new field or available to us to add to the form. It's a weird quirk here. If you add another new field, it kind of refreshes that field listing. And we will call this partner margin. There we are. And you'll notice it has it, because it's a currency, it adds one in the base currency as well. CRM is a multi-currency system.
Of course.
So now
just like Creatio, right? So every modern CRM has to be multi-currency enabled, because all of the global organizations that are using CRMs, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to drag partner margin in. We'll put it right under our B2B type here, so people remember to fill it out. And we will save this change. So part of the fun of living in this environment is you can make all kinds of changes in the system, add new fields, modify the forms, add new forms, new views, whatever. But until you publish your changes, either system-wide, which I don't recommend doing very often, or specifically on this entity, which is generally speaking the safer method, until you publish, your changes are not reflected in the interface.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and publish this customization real quick. At that point, it's publishing basically everything, all the changes that we made for the opportunity entity.
Yeah, and you know what I've noticed, just like what you're through the steps that you're doing now, and again, it's just catching my eye because I've been using Creatio for so many years. I've been demonstrating our configuration capabilities so many times over these years. Is that when it gets to kind of Microsoft Dynamics, configuration. First of all, what you had to add a field to the structure of the object, right? To go through a pretty long process of applying all of the base settings and base properties towards that field. And what you did next is only then you dragged it to the interface and you were able to kind of have it where you want it to be. So that's kind of just creating a lot of moving around and like too many clicks for me personally, right? But also, like, another thing that I've noticed when you had that configuration site open, I've noticed like it's a pop-up on top of a pop-up, like on top of a pop-up. Yeah, and you have like three. Yeah, so it looks like just again, I'm gonna be it's just personally for me, just looks like when you're have those annoying like ads like popping up all over the internet. Why they invented the pop-up blocker. Right, like this is kind of what is out there. Well, with us, it's just clean. You have those different areas, or just even one window that you're using for configuration that you need to have open and available, right? But again, this is just me. I don't want to say anything about this. Some people actually like it that way. Some of them actually work with multiple open windows at the same time. It's just personal preferences. And
exactly.
Chris, Chris, what I did notice is that you also have an area for the business rules definition, right? When you're talking about the interface.
We do, absolutely. And I did want to mention that. So on that form, if I go back into the form, you can create business rules, which is basically like, mini JavaScript without having to code any JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
So something the case like, in this case, B2B type, if we selected channel as an option, we could show the partner margin field or make that field required, or if it's not channel, then partner margin would be hidden or at least not required. So
and how does the configuration look on inside of Microsoft Dynamics, just so that we have like a little,
let's jump in here,
a little peek right there.
The business rule. Yep, you can see it's kind of in the new Power Apps view and of data and everything. So I can see, here's my condition. Mm-hmm. I'll say, on my entity, if my B2B type equals channel, I'll apply that. And then I would say, these are the things you can do. You can lock, unlock fields, pop an error message, set a default field value in another field, make a field required, or make it visible or not.
Yeah.
So you just kind of drag it over.
Yep.
Say, oh, okay. Now I'm going to make my partner margin visible.
Mm-hmm.
And apply that guy. And you save him, and away you go.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I mean, they tried.
It's pretty nice. They've come a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a good touch. Trying to kind of visualize this process a little bit, almost as in adding like business rules and business processes, right? Where you have some sort of a conditioning and you can kind of branch it out. That's great. I would probably ask the broadcast managers to switch the presentation to my screen, so that we can also have a look at how exactly we do the business rule configuration on our side before jumping to our next kind of point of demonstration, which will be the workflow definition, right? And in this case, thank you, Chris, for the UI demonstration. That was pretty sweet. So what we're doing here is, again, as part of our section wizard area, we've got the business rules set up, right? This is kind of the second area that we're working with. And in case we wanted to add a new business rule, right? For us, this is where we're not doing the visual configuration kind of drag and drop. we've simplified it to the point where it's a simple if-then conditioning, right? So this is where I can say that if in our field for type, we have a specific, lookup value, or I can as well just, compare these to a field value, to another field value, to the system setting, to some attributes. And in case we're saying that this is going to be a partner sale, right, we then want to make a field visible on the page, right? And we're saying that we're going to be adding the partner margin, right? So in our kind of, in the way that we see it, it is a little bit easier when you have if-thens as conditions, right? So, because when you're going through the visual configuration, it might be a little bit of complicated to keep an eye, like a very simple way of understanding on a single screen. What's the condition? What is the result of that condition being met, right? But again, this is just something that we believe in, right? And one more thing that I wanted to mention before we jump further, right? Another third area of the section wizard that we really didn't touch upon right now, and I don't think we're going to be looking at as well, but I wanted to check with you, Chris. In Creatio, when you are going through the changes with the help of the section wizard, right, you still have access to the source code of the page that is actually going to be storing all of the changes that were done by that user, right? Because we believe that you should have the seamless transition between what you configure through low-code drag and drop tools and what you can continue, and what you can develop through more of a pro development approach, classic development approach. Within Microsoft Dynamics, do you have the capability of actually kind of have the seamless transition where everything you do through drag and drop is reflected in the code and you can just pick it up any time you want?
Yeah, not exactly. You can kind of on the back end of the forms, you can do some JavaScripting and you can see any JavaScript libraries that you might have done. Other than that, you are, kind of building a plugin that's using the, approved, Microsoft.NET CRM code base and toolkit to get things done.
Yeah. So it's not something that is available straight away, like out of the box offering. You
it
have
is
to get like an add-on.
Highly visible like that, correct?
Okay. I got it. I mean, that's no harsh feelings on this side. But let's carry on with our topics today, right? Because we can continue talking about the specifics of the UI configuration for hours and days, and I'm afraid not everybody has that time. But what we're going to do now, we're going to start working with the other side of the configuration, which is going to be the definition of the workflow, right? Or the major stages in the opportunity lifecycle, if you would call it that way. Or in other words, taking this progress bar on top and configuring it to be specific towards a specific type of opportunity that we want to follow, right? Direct sale or partner sale. And what we do in this case, we're actually going to be reusing our dynamic case management framework and approach, where we can say that based on a specific type of the record, right? And this is what we're actually have defined as the primary differentiator for our type of opportunity, right? We're going to have a specific type of workflow, that progress bar that is going to be displayed for the end user. And what we're doing in this case is, again, providing a simple tool to be able to define that high-level view over the stages, right? And to be able to actually say, these are the stages that I want to have. These are the steps that I want to have within those. So what we can do in this case is say that if we're going to be doing a direct sale, right, on the right-hand side, we just need to tie this specific case settings or DCM settings to a specific type of the sale, right? And then you've got the configuration of the stages. So at any moment, if you can actually reuse the base view that you have, right? You can reuse the base settings that are already available. But we can say that, okay, we're first going to be doing the qualification, the presentation. Actually, let's just switch it straight away to partner, because it kind of makes more sense to do it for partners first, and then we're going to switch to direct sales. So let's say we're doing qualification presentation. And in this case, for the first two stages, I kind of picked it up from the existing list of stages, right? Because they're already stored in the database, there is no need to re-add them as such, right? But if I wanted to actually add a new stage, right? For example, the partner selection, I can actually see that even though I don't have this value in the system, it would actually offer me to add a new one straight away, right? Without leaving this area, without going to the value definition, as it's called in Dynamics, right? Without leaving to our lookups area, but just do it from the same area right here. Then do, and the system would add it on the fly, just to make it easier for the end user, without requiring them to actually go through multiple areas. And we're almost done here with the definition of the case, right? I'm just going to add like a couple of closing stages. But a few more things that I wanted to bring up here is that obviously we have quite a lot of control over these stages, right? First of all, on the right-hand side, you can see all of the properties of this stage, where basically one of the two, most basic ones would be saying that we want to group these two stages together so they're not taking too much space on the screen on the UI, right? I can as well say that I want to apply a specific color coding towards this stage so that it's more visual at any moment that the user is opening. And of course, I could add a dedicated color to each of the stages if this is something that I want to do. I'm more minimalistic in this case, so green and red to say that this is lost, or maybe gray to say something that's in drafts or like being prepared, some being planned. But overall, like having different color codings or specific types of opportunity processes and workflows, it's kind of like, it kind of makes sense to me. And of course, on the list of the stages right here, right, we can as well define what are the possible next stages and what are the possible previous stages that the users can move to this stage to and from, basically, right? So in this case, we can actually control how the users are going to be navigating between these stages. And it's going to align quite nicely with some other, definition of the transitional conditions within the case settings. But basically, I can say that from qualification, we cannot go to proposal, right? We cannot go to contracts, and we can only go to, presentation, partner selection, close, lost. And of course, if you're passing qualification, you might not be able to move to it at all, right? So this is, again, going to be limiting the choice of the end user, and it's going to be like a little bit of a, bringing more intuitive approach of working with the opportunities. Because if they cannot select that stage, obviously they cannot go there at this specific moment of time, right? And of course, at any time, right, for each of the stages, I can add any kind of tasks that in this case are going to be a little bit limited, because based on our user feedback, our customer voice, we've received, that this is kind of the primary requirement towards being able to set up dynamic cases, because more options are, of course, available within the process management engine, right? And dynamic case management engine is also kind of considered to be a tool for even power users, right? Like supervisors, managers, that should have the ability to go and quickly change the way that their users are following these structures and these workflows. But basically what we can do in this case is use any kind of approval, right? Again, this can be a simple sign off. This might have like a couple of levels of approvals with simple transitions, right? We can change access rights to the record, create or modify something that is related to this opportunity, perform a task, send an email, and run a sub process. And of course, I'm going to talk about running sub processes a little bit later, right? But basically, even if we're adding these tasks, right, on the right-hand side, you'll see the settings for this activity and for this action. Those of you have, and Chris, you probably yourself have seen this before in our, in our process engine. This is very similar to our activity creation within the process management. And the idea here is to provide this kind of a consistent UI, consistent approach towards the configuration. Well, obviously, we can assign different, types of and categories towards this task, have different duration and when it should start. It should be shown in calendar, assign it to different user groups, and have it connected to not just the opportunity, but let's say to the account itself, to make sure that we are actually maintaining the full history of interaction across all of the application, right?
Right.
And what I mentioned in terms of having the ability to control the transitions here is that we can either say that this task should be performed at the very beginning of the stage, right? Or after the previous step is completed, which is qualified customer. We're going to see it on the list right here. And I can as well say that this step is actually required, so the users cannot move forward without completing it. And if we have a specific result towards this stage, we're then going to be automatically switching to the next stage in the case, right? So even though this is very limited from a point of view of, this is the only list of the business rules that I have to choose from. But if you think about it, when you're talking about very simple design mode, very simple and quick, guideline creation for your end users without any business business process management training or knowledge whatsoever, you are still capable and able of creating all of these tasks pretty quickly, right? And have this framework of actions available for your end users. And keep in mind that at all times, of course, if you're saying that, we're actually changing our mind, we need to move these around between the stages, perhaps the whole partner selection stage should be, and let me just take this, with an activity can be just moved simply across the whole workflow and the whole life cycle, right? So making changes on this side would take less than 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? Creating a whole new case would take me probably, under 30 minutes as an outline of what I want my users to do, what I want my users to follow. But Chris, probably at this point, enough about us. Let's switch to your screen. Let's have our broadcast manager switch to your Dynamics instance, and let's have a look at what is happening in the configuration world specifically for this kind of workflow definition with Microsoft Dynamics.
Absolutely. So I'm back on our opportunity, and you'll see we have a process running, opportunity sales process.
Yep.
Dynamics CRM calls these business process flows. So they're a unique, distinct category from a normal, let's say, workflow process.
Okay.
And one of the fun things about these processes is when you make any record, any, in this case, opportunity, by default, it's going to get, whatever process is defined, and you can define a hierarchy of processes based on, security roles or different types and things like that. So we have one defined in the system right now, our opportunity sales process again, and you can see what stage you're at, how long you've been at that stage. And if I jump in here and look at my qualify, these are the pieces of data that need to get filled out. And you can, if there's a little red asterisk, that means it's required. So I have to fill that out in order to move on to the next stage. So just a little bit about the visual, and let's kind of jump in and edit this process. So again, I'm going to put the phone out of the way and jump into not our customization area, but our second tab. And I'm going to go over to processes. And again, this is kind of on the magical back end a little bit. And we're going to look specifically for business process flows. And you can see there's, you can define multiple for any entity in the system. But again, we're looking at opportunity sales process. So similar to the screen that we showed when we were creating business rules on a form, it's a similar type view using the Power Apps. So every process starts, right? It's going to get the qualify stage. So if I look at my settings for here over on the right, I can name this stage anything I want. And I can pick from one of these 8 kind of predefined categories. And they just kind of mean different things, but they are what they are. And
sure, but can you add new categories towards these kind of stage definition as we have it on our side?
Not easily, no, but they can kind of, the category is loosely needed. Say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see where you're
The
going with
main
this one.
thing it's doing is you can name it whatever you want to name it. And then one of the, these business process flows can span different opportunities. So let's say you started on a lead. Um, there's a process flow for that, and if it reaches a certain stage, qualify, it will turn into an opportunity and start running and continue along that path. So if I had an opportunity that wanted to get to a quote, I could make a single business process flow that spans across an opportunity and a quote all within one process flow, and just
Okay.
define how we relate those entities. Um, so further, we could add business rules for this stage, for that opportunity if we needed to. But for now, we will just look up here. One of the things that we did is how in Creatio, you had two cases based on what type it was, partner or not partner. In our process flow, we make a condition, much like we did before, and say, oh, okay, if this field type, and this field type is defined right here in step 1, it's required,
Mm-hmm.
so that we have the correct information. If this field is, let's say, inside sales, we're going to follow this process up here on the top. However, if it's not inside, meaning it's channel, and again, you can kind of mess with the logic here, and you can have multiple conditions. If I needed to add a second one, I could pick that, or a third. So you can have multiple conditions and pick some and or logic to see how that applies out. Much like an if then, but just a kind of a GUI type version. So if this is channel, we have a new stage here that I dragged in, called channel. And when you're building these stages, you're defining, okay, I have my stage, I have its name. These are the things that I can do as a part of this. It's filling out data. I can call a workflow, a custom action, which is again a special type of workflow. And Microsoft is working on being able to link up to call other flows, like Power Flow
Okay.
stuff as well.
Okay, so based on what I kind of see here, right? There's no separate area. Let's put it this way, right? So work with dynamic case management framework as such, right? Because the way that they're usually structured is that they base out of those stages, and then under each stage you have to see what is really dedicated to that one. This is kind of combined view, right? And this is kind of a way of maybe showing it a little bit more compact from the point of view where you can see all kinds of types of sales and definitions and dependencies between type of the opportunity and stages that are going to be involved, but doesn't give you really that single and holistic view of every single type of action that's going to be completed within that stage, right? Whether this is develop or channel or anything else.
I would agree with that a little bit. It does, where you're, it does define, what pieces of information, basically, fields on the record that you need to fill out on each stage.
Sure, but didn't you have the same kind of capability when we were talking about the business rules definition? Isn't that kind of creating the, the functionality duplication? And is that like a little bit confusing for users?
It's a good question. It's a little bit different. If it's a little bit different, yeah. So the business rules don't necessarily define what stages you're in. More just, how fields interact with each other. Whereas, our business process flow here is saying, okay, if I'm looking at an opportunity, I'm in this certain stage and I need to fill out these pieces of information. So you're defining, kind of the process and the core things that you want to gather for that opportunity. Similar to how you guys have your dynamic case management. Similar.
Yeah,
similar.
I think that's the key word, right? Similar, but not quite the same. Special, like a special action, special type of workflow that you can launch on that side.
Correct. So let's say I wanted to add a new stage here. I'm just going to drag a new stage.
Yep.
We'll give a name. This is partner. Partner gathering. And we'll just say it's in the identify stage. All right. Okay. So now, if I'm looking at our stage, we need to fill out some information. So we have at least one data step we're going to do, and we're going to pick that partner margin field that we added, and we'll just make it required. Further, if I needed to on the stage, if I'm looking at components, again, I could call a workflow or a custom action and have a workflow run based on whatever criteria is needed. And from there, we'll jump into the close stage as well.
Yeah. Okay. So and can you kind of move? Can you change, like, switch places between that new stage that you just added for partner info and channel? Can you move around the steps within those stages, or is that kind of like, if it's sitting there, it's sitting there forever unless you take it out?
We can move them around and kind of change the connections a little bit. Mm-hmm. For example, you can see if I wanted partnering, I forgot to hit my apply button. I can drag him to the front here if I wanted to, or drag him back. And then if I wanted to, kind of change how my things are connected, I can mess with our connector here and, put it back up in a different spot instead of leaving it here.
Yeah, I see. Okay, perfect. Well, again, as I'm looking at this is a little bit of, overcomplicated in my opinion when it gets to, how the users are accessing this. When you kind of start going through, again, the structure of, opening in different windows. Well, good thing we didn't go to the blue screen, to the safe mode of Windows, right? Didn't have to call out through the bootstrap or whatever. That's good enough for now. And again, right, so this is just a very different approach towards how we would be defining those stages and steps underneath them, right? Some functionality, in my opinion, is maybe duplicated. Maybe it's just, different ways of approaching it, and it's not a problem. Well, at this moment, I'm just going to ask the product managers to switch back to my screen because we have only 15 minutes left for this session, right? And I did want to leave like a few minutes in the end to talk about the the adoption, the trainings, limitations as well. Now, what we were kind of talking about right here, and what you've mentioned, right, is that Microsoft Dynamics, of course, under each stage can actually launch different types of actions and can as well run workflows. And of course, in our case, since the process engine is tightly connected to the dynamic case management framework, we of course allow the same kind of functionality. And again, another thing to keep in mind that our vision is that the DCM is a perfect tool for more of a streamlined, agile processes, chaotic processes, even when you don't have a clear structure of actions or you don't really care about their order, right? Where the process engine is best working within those environments where you have that clear structure, when exactly things should be happening based on the results of previous steps. And of course, a lot of our customers take advantage of actually leveraging the DCM first to outline the high-level structure of their processes. And once they understand the structure better, they substitute those steps with the business process, right? So it's kind of a like a learning curve towards understanding their own organizational processes through working with the application. And of course, at any moment, we can inbuild this, this element of a sub-process call-out and choose one of the existing business processes that we already have in the application, or even jump into creation of a new one, right? And the idea here is that, of course, this is going to be the place where we're going to be leveraging the full power of, business process management engine of Creatio, our bread and butter our core component of the application, something that we've been solely developing for the past 16 years or even more. And this is where our heart is at. Now, obviously, if I wanted to reach the screen, I could probably go to the process library, spend maybe 2 clicks or 3 clicks to get there, right? But why would I need to switch if I can actually access it within the case management? Again, like simple navigation, simple way of going around your system, right? And in this case, we see that there is a specific process that I'm reusing, right? I can see some of the properties of this process. At any moment, I could as well simply apply changes to it to look at the properties of any action, right? And I can actually see that on my right-hand side, the settings panel is actually pretty much the same as we've seen in the dynamic case management settings, right? So again, it's kind of consistent approach, consistent user interface and way of configuration. And this is what we're trying to deliver across all of our application. And definitely, if I wanted to add some additional steps, some additional activities and actions towards this business process, I could simply take and kind of drag an item out of it, right, based on the most common type of actions that can be used, right? And I can then actually change and switch the type to either user engaging elements. If this is what I need to use, like asking a system question, opening up an edit page, or using a auto-generated page, pre-configured one, sending emails and approvals, or of course switch to a list of system actions, right? Those where we really show the power of Creatio through data manipulation, the base CRUD on an individual record basis, or bulk running formula calculations, changing access rights. And what is most important, really calling web services and predicting data, right? So even within the process engine, we're using these more advanced features and tools to kind of have this single environment of controlling your system environment, right? Your application environment. Because even though I'm kind of looking at this specific process as a combination of user engaging elements and system elements, right? This is best practice. This is where you encourage the user to be involved only at those steps and that point where it is absolutely necessary for him to be involved. And the system does the rest of the steps for him. But we, of course, are able to create completely system process, non-human centric, and those processes that are going to be just running data update, data integrations on a event basis or on a timer basis, since those are just different types of starting points that we can support, right? And within the same tool, really build up the muscle of the CRM application, of the studio application, of a low-code application, business app as such. So there's no need to learn different tools and multiple ways of configuring the application. You've got your UI, you've got your section design, you've got your DCM, you've got your process engine, and you're good to go. You're good to build your system as you want it to be working, right? And that is, of course, a very high-level overview. We are still, unfortunately, limited. So I'm going to just ask, for the broadcast managers to switch to your screen. Chris, if you may, just give us a very brief, 2-3 minute overview of what we have of what you have in Microsoft Dynamics, and we'll continue with the session.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So we're back in our processes area. I've opened up a process that a workflow, as Dynamics would call this, to, let's say, when you select channel op, you're going to send an email to whomever, maybe assign it. So here I am in there, I guess kind of as you termed it earlier, the OG method of workflows and CRM. So if logic, conditional branches, all that fun stuff. And then you can add as many steps and logic in here as you need to and keep digging down as you need to. What you can do is create, update records, assign them, send emails, and perform custom actions, or maybe change a status, like if you needed to reopen an opportunity or something like that. Stop it. And then you'll see down here, there's a lot of other things. You can create custom plugins or, buy or download solutions into Dynamics, and, further enhance the system, to do all kinds of
so like a marketplace of extensions and add-ons, right?
Basically, yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Something we have.
And then for the workflow, it can run on demand, meaning I just run it manually when I need to. It can run as a child process, which would be like if you're calling it from the business process flow, or you're calling it from another workflow, or it can run automatically. Whether when a record is created, a field value changes, it gets assigned, it gets deleted, something like that. So there's multiple different ways to handle when the process starts, and how it gets triggered, and then the various different things you can do in the system. So
yeah, interesting. As and even as I'm looking at this kind of configuration of the workflow, which is not really a workflow, right? This is like a sequence of steps. I'm kind of wondering, when was it like last updated, right? Because when you were configuring the business roles, you kind of had a little bit of a visual configuration, right? It had like a little bit of a like a flow-ish kind of style
right.
of configuring, right? And this is really conditions to complete steps and sequences. I remember, Apple had some of these kind of workflow steps when they were trying to push for their automator that didn't really work out, and they kind of abandoned it many years ago. This is obviously not, BPMN 2.0 kind of based. This is just their interpretation, like their way of analyzing, looking at automation steps. Right?
This is, this is the very. It's been around for many versions of their software. They are, so I'd say the vast majority of CRM customers are used to this interface that have been messing with things. What Microsoft is doing is moving everything to Flow and Power Automate, which gives you a lot more interoperability and features and functionality. You just need to have that Flow Power Automate is in the Microsoft Office stack, and then you get the full feature of that. But I went with the OG version because that's what most of the CRM customers that.
Well, we're comparing here like out of the box solutions, right? What would you get if you would just subscribe or go and like get a trial? This was kind of like one of the conditions about like comparing these products. And I see where you mean here, and maybe just a few questions before we kind of stop the presentation here. Just if you could remind me, the calling to the web services, data prediction, running, those are not available within this tool. You have to have a third-party Power App to do that.
Within this part, you would need the Power Automate to do those web services and data prediction pieces. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And we're talking about also like data update, data manipulation, right? Like adding data in bulk or in a single record, updating some records, deleting them. Is that available within this kind of tool or not exactly?
Using this one, you can update, single records pretty much. And then with Power Automate, you have a lot more flexibility to build out integrations and bulk read data.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, in this case, Chris, I'm probably going to ask our broadcast managers to stop sharing our screens, right? Just so that we can call this as a completed demonstration of the product capability. And let's probably just spend a couple of minutes, having just a general discussion as we usually do about, when comparing some products. And first of all, I wanted to thank you, thank you very much for, spending this time with us, showing, Microsoft Dynamics configuration capability. It was a fun ride for me personally, and I did really enjoy it. So, Chris, a few questions here, right, is definitely about the adoption, right, of these kind of tools. What are the training schedules like? What are the, how long are the trainings? How long does it take for a system admin, or I believe a developer in the case of Microsoft Dynamics, to actually adopt the application, adopt those configuration tools?
That's a good question. The easy answer is it depends on the person, doing the learning
of course,
and skills they have already, of course. But Microsoft has a very good documentation site.
Mm-hmm.
docs.microsoft.com where you can see this. They have a number of user guides, training videos out on.
So they do have some sort of a
YouTube.
like community approach and
There's definitely a
infrastructure.
community approach, and there are more guided like in-person or video-led webinar-based training sessions as well to actually get certified on the system administration side of Dynamics CRM. And then again, as a partner, we're happy to train our customers to do anything that they feel they can learn.
Of course. Well, one of the reasons why I'm kind of jumping into this comparison, because we see that the adoption cycle of Creatio tools is rather quick, right? Our users don't really take a lot of time to learn these tools for configuration and like where to find them, which dropdowns you have to open, which areas you have to go. Do you need the bootstrap? Do you need to enter the safe mode on your computer and your laptop to actually get there? And of course, we as well provide a certain ecosystem for our customers and users and partners, right? You've used that ecosystem yourself. We do have our academy services with the self-learning, with guided learning, with the personal learning, a lot of videos and documentation that is being updated constantly. Yeah. So I think maybe this is somewhat where we would compare. Again, I'm not going to be talking directly about the time to adopt, because this is again kind of subjective in my opinion, right? But I can see from the complexity of these tools, maybe it's going to take a little bit longer, right? And probably,
I will add, there's probably Dynamics. One of their strongest points is there's a really, really great, strong community around them.
Of course, they've been on the market for many years, right? They had their time to grow their community. And definitely this is starting from the point that those people that were probably developing on .NET many, many years ago, right, kind of migrated towards that community over the years. So that's kind of normal, right? But definitely one of those questions that we like to bring up during product battles are pricing and limitations, right? So what are the what's the price point when it gets to license to configure the application? Right, and what are the limitations staying behind the configuration of Microsoft Dynamics?
Okay, so you'd need a license. Let's say you had a user that was going to get in and do all like system configuration, everything. They would have a normal user license at the normal price point for Dynamics CRM. And again, kind of based on, let's say, the professional or the enterprise version, you're going to have a little more power there and the ability to link up to something like Power Automate and Power Flow and all that kind of stuff versus, kind of having.
Which is going to be extra cost, extra subscription, right?
It comes kind of with the enterprise level, but it's also, married in with your Office 365 subscription and what you might have already. There's a lot of Microsoft Office 365 users. You can buy it right through the portal and sign up for everything. So based on your licensing, if you're a big Microsoft shop and you've already got that, it's a big selling point. So that's one of the perks.
Okay, yeah. Well, just to, for a point of comparison, again, our price point for the configuration, we don't charge for extra for the admin license, for the configuration license, right? You're getting the full control and full access to the configuration mode as you subscribe with Creatio. The price point for the base underlying platform configurability is really $25 per user per month, which is incredible when it gets to the point of building apps and configuration in general, right? The sales license starts at $35. And of course, again, I would continue this conversation for many, many hours. You're an incredible guest to have. Thank you for joining us today. At this point, I'm probably going to just close out this session. Chris, thank you again very much for joining. And I hope to talk to you soon and have you as a guest on one of these in the nearest time.
Looking forward to it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.